We are mere days away from the Stanley Cup Final. I'm Meghan Ottolini here at TD Garden, joined by Marissa and Jemmy, beat writer for our Bruins beat at the Boston Herald. So, Marissa, we had an intra-squad scrimmage here tonight. Not something I've ever covered before. What did you think of this?
I don't think any of us have done anything like this before. It was pretty weird, but it was cool. They needed to get their work in. 11 days off. It's the most in Stanley Cup history to have that much time between games. So they've had some intense practices the past couple of days, but this was obviously a bit more. We saw Tuukka Raskinen, we saw them pull him, we saw the Black Aces in there, we saw the entire team pretty much. David Krejci wasn't there. Marchand looked like he got hurt for a minute and he's fine. So it was an event.
So you said they've had some intense practices. How did the level of this competition compare to that? Obviously, it's funny because we're in TD Garden and we're usually used to seeing these guys come out at a high speed, hitting, much more physical, and it was a little more tepid tonight. Obviously, you don't want anyone to get hurt, and it was a little scary there with Marchand for a second. So I guess, what was the physicality level compared to those practices?
Well, what Bruce Cassidy's been stressing all week is that they don't want to run guys. They're just here for compete and for pace. Those are the two words he kept using, and we saw that. We saw they were having their puck battles, but they weren't smashing up against the boards or anything like that. They were working a lot on technical things like the power play to 6-on-5 at the end, and they actually scored on that, so I'm sure everyone feels good about that. Working on a penalty kill, we saw Jake DeBrusk get traded mid-game and ended up on the power play. They end up scoring, so it wasn't anything too intense, but it was definitely a little more amped up than you would see in a regular practice.
We caught up with a couple of those guys after the scrimmage to hear how ready they're feeling for the Stanley Cup and whether the scrimmage really helped them knock off the rust tonight.
It's nice to get the game day routines going, and have a good lunch, good nap, and prepare like you would for a game day. So it's a good throwback to remember all the rituals and whatever you need to do to get ready for a game.
You try to take it day by day and just enjoy it, whether it's really sinking in or not. You just got to treat it like it's another game, it's another series.
So Sunday we'll get our first glimpse of the Blues when they come to Boston. They're doing a media availability and full practice here. And then Monday, Game 1. How do you see the Bruins matching up against the Blues?
This team is the most similar to the Bruins, and they've played so far. I think Columbus was a lot like the Bruins in a lot of sense, and the Blues are too. They have big defensemen, they're physical, they have a lot of depth, and that's really the difference between them and the three teams the Bruins have seen is the depth at forward.
So do you think that the depth is going to be the biggest challenge for the Bruins on their end? They've had so many different scorers. Is that going to be something that they have to contend with on the other side?
Yeah, just like how the Bruins have 19 different goal scorers, St. Louis has 18 different goal scorers too. So they're almost mirror images of each other. Bruce Cassidy said a couple of days ago, it's almost like playing their twin. So that's different to anyone they've seen. Like I said, Columbus is a little bit like them, but they have some differences too, especially on special teams. Then you look at Carolina, that was a way different team. Toronto, they were much faster, and the Bruins were trying to contend with that. Once they got past them, that narrative kind of ended, and they went back to playing the way they do. But the thing about the Bruins is they adapt to almost every scenario they've been in all year, and that goes all the way back to the regular season, to Toronto, Columbus, Carolina. So whatever St. Louis throws at them, there's no doubt the Bruins have the ability to adjust, but it's just different because it's a team that's so much like them. Maybe that helps them because they have that familiarity.
It's like an evil twin.
Exactly.
Who's the evil twin in this scenario, though?
For Bruins fans, it would have to be St. Louis, I would say.
Okay, well, the Bruins will face their doppelganger on Monday in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. But as I said, we'll have Sunday practice, media availability, and a ton of content leading up to that. Marissa, thank you so much for joining me.